Well, it's often said that the devil can pose, can speak, and even look like an emissary of light. And the way that he deceives is not through overt evil, but by actually pretending and looking like the good. And in today's passage, we see that on full display, the way that the devil acts and looks like the God we're supposed to worship, and brings millions of people from the earth under his sway. Revelation 12:18 through 13:10. Then the dragon stood on the seashore, and I saw a beast coming up out of the sea. It had 10 horns with 7 heads. Each of its horns was decorated with a royal crown, and on its heads were blasphemous names. The beast I saw was like a leopard. Its feet were like a bear's, and its mouth was like a lion's mouth. The dragon gave it its power, throne, and great authority. One of its heads appeared to have been slain and killed, but its deadly wound was healed. So the whole earth was amazed and followed the beast. They worshipped the dragon because it had given the beast its authority. They worshipped the beast and said, "Who is like the beast, and who can fight against it?" The beast was given a mouth that spoke boastful and blasphemous things, and it was given authority to act for 42 months. It opened its mouth to speak blasphemies against God. It blasphemed God's name and his dwelling place, that is, those who dwell in heaven. It was also allowed to make war on the saints and to gain victory over them. It was given authority over every tribe, people, language, and nation. All who live on earth worshipped it, and all whose names hadn't been written from the time the earth was made in the scroll of life of the Lamb who was slain. Whoever has ears must listen. If any are to be taken captive, then into captivity they will go. If any are to be killed by the sword, then by the sword they will be killed. This calls for endurance and faithfulness on the part of the saints. So we're continuing this sequence. Chapter 12, we saw the woman who I argued was a symbol for Israel, giving birth to the son who was to rule the nations with an iron rod, which I think is the Messiah, Jesus, coming from the line of Israel to then be exalted. The beast tried to capture him and devour him, but instead he's exalted through his resurrection. And in his resurrection, they wage war against the beast and throw him down to the earth. That was all the first half of chapter 12. Now into chapter 13, we see the beast waging war against the world. And there's a couple things I'll point out here, but the beast, there's a lot of images here that I'll try to put stuff in the show notes like always. But what John is depicting here is, I would describe, and many others would be, it's like this anti-Trinity. We talk so much about the Antichrist, that word never shows up here, but the images here, it's a complete subversion of the sort of images we've seen of God himself. So Jesus is the one who is and was to come, and God who is the one who has all the power and the throne. And so God, we've already been introduced to God on the throne who has all authority. And the Lamb who is slain but still lives would parallel this. The head appeared to have been slain and killed, but its deadly wound was healed. So the one that the head killed and then healed. So there's this, and then the whole earth is amazed. Like there's this very anti-Jesus, anti-Trinitarian look to this beast. There's also some very clear references here with the different animals and the heads and the horns and stuff to all of the prophecies in the book of Daniel. Kind of talking about the end and how these beasts that come subverting creation and attacking the people of God. And so the beasts are coming, attacking the people of God, but also swaying most of the world to their cause because in a way they look too similar to the truth, which I think is a really key point there that can help us reflect on what are we supposed to be looking out for. People that teachings and modes of worship that look so similar, right? Oh, you also worship someone who appears to have been killed and then risen from the dead. Maybe you are also preaching the truth. How many teachers of even the Bible, this seeps into the church, sadly enough. There are people that are teaching what looks to be truth, but actually it's a lie. And out in the world, there's a lot of ways of trying to worship, all this different spiritualities and other forms of worship and religions that are getting close, are giving some sort of parallel truth, but when you dig deeper and deeper, it's not pointing us back to the Lamb who was slain. It's pointing us in another direction. So he's given authority to act, and he's opening his mouth to speak blasphemies against God. I wanted to focus in. This one was sticking out to me. Blasphemy, it cursed or blasphemed God's name and his dwelling place. But then the text says, that is, those who dwell in heaven. So this is interesting. It seems what it's saying here is that the symbol for his dwelling place is synonymous with those who dwell in heaven. That's kind of interesting. If you remember back to, was it chapter 10 or 11, when John was given a measuring rod and told to measure the temple. And we talked about how then that's a symbolic, it wasn't the physical temple on earth, it was a symbol of God's dwelling place, right? So to measure the temple was God's dwelling place there, which then kind of morphed into the two witnesses, which I also think are a parallel for the church as a whole. They are the lampstands. They're not two individual humans, but a symbol for the whole church of Christ being God's witnesses on the earth. And so all of this, again, conflating it all together, but blaspheming God's name and his dwelling place equals those who dwell in heaven. Okay, hold on to that, because then the contrast is over here. All who live on earth worshipped it, whose names hadn't been written from the time the earth was made in the scroll of life of the Lamb who was slain. And we've talked about this several times, but this passage just makes it really clear. There is a big difference in the book of Revelation between what John would call the earth dwellers and the heaven dwellers. And I don't think this is our physical location, but our allegiance. So this is about allegiance, not physical location. It's really, again, I've pointed this out a few times, but there are ways that John essentially is describing the same thing that we'll find in the letters of Paul, but with very symbolic apocalyptic imagery. So instead of just saying the church is the body of Christ, he's going to talk about the two witnesses and the temple being measured and all that other stuff. Here, Paul in Philippians talks about our citizenship. He says we, the church, we're citizens of heaven. We are dwelling on earth, but our citizenship is not from here. And so we're supposed to bring the values and the life of the kingdom of heaven onto earth, because that's where our citizenship is really from. And so in the same way, we are not citizens of earth, we're citizens of heaven. And I think throughout the book of Revelation, that's what John is describing here. Those who dwell on the earth is his church. This is the church of Christ who are following after the testimony of Jesus. And our citizenship is in heaven, even though we still are physically on the earth. And those who live on the earth dwellers, are those whose allegiance is to the earth. And there's a big contrast here. And so this you can call it the Antichrist, but it's really the anti-Trinity, is running his course throughout the earth, swaying people to his cause, and even looking at times like Jesus himself, through his actions, through his warped messaging and theology. People think that they're worshiping the truth, but they're actually worshiping the lie. But for those of us whose citizenship is in heaven, we know different. And so we continue to conquer the dragon and the beast. We don't bow down to him, because we have been sealed and our names are written in the scroll of the life of the Lamb. But some of us are going to be killed. Those that are going to be killed, you're going to be killed. Those that are going to go into captivity, you're going into captivity. There's this sober reality. To be a follower of God in this world, in this place, means persecution and suffering and even death. But that doesn't mean that we lost the battle. Our victory is still won, because we have endurance and faithfulness in Jesus, and our hope is in him.